Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. Hope you guys do enjoy this nightcap episode. The topics that we'll be going over tonight. There was a three-team trade discussion between the Detroit Pistons, Houston Rockets, and Boston Celtics. We'll be going over Trey Murphy the third, latest intel on the trade rumors surrounding his name. Marcus Sasser, he is heading to Dallas. We'll be going over how they are going to maneuver this trade. We know Tobias Harris is going to the San Antonio Spurs. We now know what the Detroit Pistons' initial offer was to Tobias. Duncan Robinson update. Are they keeping him? Are they waiving him? How the Detroit Pistons can actually add some players helping teams that are in the tax. There's a couple of players outlined in a tweet from somebody that is very good with cap space that we'll be going over. Ugonna, who was a second-round pick by the Detroit Pistons, did sign his contract today. We now know what type of contract he signed. And to end the podcast, you guys, we'll be going over the Detroit Pistons 2026 Las Vegas Summer League roster. But let's get into today's episode. First, what we're going to be doing with today's episode is we're going to be sharing the screen with you guys that are listening. And this is from a Clutch Points podcast talking about the Detroit Pistons and Jalen Duran and a star player that has interest of playing with Cade. So take a listen.
Something happens with the Houston Rockets. Maybe they get back involved there and they try to get a deal done for Kevin Durant, because we know that they have interest in Durant. As we mentioned earlier on the show, Kevin Durant has interest in playing with Cade Cunningham. And so is there a deal to be had there where you can send Jalen Duran and pair him with Şengün? I don't think so. I don't see that being a possibility. But we'll wait and see what happens with Jalen Duran, because it really seems like there's just one team at this point, and that's the Pistons.
So I don't want to focus on the Jalen Duran aspect whatsoever. My ears really perked up. One, with Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant to the Pistons, that piques my interest. Two, Kevin Durant wants to play with Cade Cunningham. That really should not come as a surprise, though. Like, out of all the star players in the NBA, Kevin Durant, to me, I think has been like a really good mentor to Cade. I mean, there's videos of him before he even got drafted, going first overall to Detroit, checking on him, doing, little video interviews with the boardroom, this past season which is his company. KD has always, I think, really appreciated Cade Cunningham's game from afar. Obviously, the way things went this playoffs with Houston getting bounced in the first round and the alleged burner account, it was out there, which I don't even know if that was really Kevin Durant's burner account. It's interesting, man. It's interesting. And there was like framework with this trade rumor that Brett Siegel had talked about on his podcast. And in the framework with this trade was Kevin Durant to the Detroit Pistons, Jaylen Brown to the Houston Rockets before he did get traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, and Alperen Şengün to the Boston Celtics. Apparently, the Rockets just weren't really in love with sending Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün in a trade, obviously. Those are two of their more valuable players on their team. But there's been a lot of chatter with Kevin Durant, this offseason. There have been teams that have been interested in trading for Kevin Durant. We talk about the Pistons need more of a scoring punch. I mean, KD just checks that box 100%. It's exactly what the Pistons need. They struck out with Kawhi Leonard. They're trying with Kevin Durant. The one thing I will say is this, even though this front office hasn't landed that big fish that we've anticipated this offseason, I mean, at least they're attempting. We're hearing that they tried to go get Kyrie Irving very early on. Dallas had no interest in moving him. We heard the Kawhi stuff. Now Kevin Durant, Austin Reeves. This front office is trying to, get a secondary option next to Cade Cunningham so he doesn't have to do it all himself. So far, it hasn't happened. And again, we're day 3 into free agency. A lot could happen, but I did want to kind of touch on the Kevin Durant conversation for a couple of minutes to start the podcast. Again, it was just a conversation. Houston was not interested, but maybe Detroit and Houston can continue to have conversations. And maybe KD does want to come to Detroit. Maybe he wants to play with Cade Cunningham after seeing, back-to-back seasons of going from 6th place to 1st place. Rest of the East is getting better. I think we can all agree there. Everyone is making huge upgrades. I still can't believe Boston traded. I still can't believe they traded Jaylen Brown for Paul George. They're doing bath salts, man. When I saw that trade, and I know it's the Pistons podcast, but that was probably one of the worst trades I've ever seen. Like, I know they wanted to get off of Jaylen Brown's money. I know there's just been a lot of nasty discourse with him because he does like a Twitch stream channel and he just kind of hangs out and talks with fans. But like, after they put him in the Giannis trade, I think the writing was kind of on the wall and they were just desperately looking for a team to take him on. Now, obviously, Pistons fans wanted Jaylen Brown, but I think when you kind of just talk about matching a $57 million salary, I don't really know how Detroit could actually physically do it. Even if you did want to include a Jalen Duren swap, only $20 million of a sign and trade would be able to be allowed in a Jaylen Brown for possible Jalen Duren trade again. So you would have to still find $37 million worth of salary. Then you have like non-guaranteed guys with Duncan Robinson that you would want to include. And it would only go like $2 million against the cap for a trade. So again, like Philly got so much better. They're having a really good free agency. They got Anthony Simons today. Like insane. East is getting so much better. But I do want to kind of go over to the Trey Murphy talk. Okay. So we discussed last week what the asking price was, and you guys were so active on that podcast. You really liked it, got into it, had a lot of strong opinions about the asking price, which hasn't gone down. Still 3 first-round picks. But we have some more insight today from Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype. So we'll be putting a couple of screenshots from his article on the screen for you guys to follow along. So let's get into his latest article. It says, following the blockbuster Jaylen Brown trade, there are those within the league circles wondering if New Orleans Pelicans forward Trey Murphy III will be the next big trade domino to fall. Before this past trading deadline, the Golden State Warriors, Detroit Pistons, Atlanta Hawks, Indiana Pacers, Portland Trailblazers, San Antonio Spurs, Los Angeles Lakers called to express interest in trading for Trey Murphy, as previously reported by Hoops Hype. Teams that are in the mix for Murphy to a varying degree are now the Boston Celtics, the Detroit Pistons, Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Clippers, Atlanta Hawks, league sources told Hoops Hype. The Celtics have monitored Murphy's trade market, and following the Brown trade for Paul George, 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks they gained extra draft capital New Orleans has desired in any trade talks. The Pistons have continuously circled their wagons on Murphy in trade talks, but felt the price was too high, with the asking price dropping from equivalently to 4 to 3 first-round picks in any Murphy trade talk recently. Will Detroit have more of an appetite to make a trade following the loss of Tobias Harris in free agency? So there is a lot to unpack here. Obviously, Trey Murphy has a lot of desire around the league, we can say. Like all the multiple teams that had interest in him. I think we understand like the type of player, the type of basketball player that he is, right? And I think if you're the Pistons and you're looking at draft capital, they want 3 first. Like that has been very consistent with the reporting from these national reporters, from even Pelicans reporters down in New Orleans. Like they want the 3 first, and that's it. Now, obviously, you have to kind of talk about the salary. He's on a very good contract, and I think the contract does have value. It really does. You go look at Trey Murphy's contract. I think it's one of the best contracts in the league for the production that you could possibly get. My question would be, is what does New Orleans want? We've heard reports that they really like Asar Thompson. They had interest in Jalen Duren. I don't know if there's still interest there. They had interest in Isaiah Stewart. Ron Holland's name has floated around. I mean, could you package something like Ron? And I don't think they want Karis LeVert, but the money does kind of work there. Maybe you throw in, another kind of like smaller to mid-range salary and the 3 first. Like, does that get it done for Trey Murphy? I'm not entirely sure. And we kind of talked about like the aspect of who's down there too. We've talked about Joe Dumars, who's a former Detroit Pistons player, won 2 championships here, and was a longtime executive that built the Going to Work Pistons and won a championship as well. So you got Joe Dumars calling the shots down there, alongside former Detroit Pistons general manager Troy Weaver. Troy Weaver is responsible for the core that we do have in Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson, Jalen Durant currently, right? A lot of his former players are up here. He probably wants some of his former players back. And I mentioned the interest with Asar Thompson. I think we can all agree, like, Asar Thompson is probably off the board in a Trey Murphy trade talk conversation. Unless you're getting like a huge all-star for Asar Thompson, you're just not trading him. He's way too valuable to your team defensively. He's the engine defensively, especially with the loss of Isaiah Stewart. Asar Thompson becomes even more valuable, in my personal opinion, because Isaiah and Asar were the 2 best defenders last season. Now it's all on Asar to be that best defender on the team, and he will be this upcoming season. So you're probably not trading Asar. I think Ron, I see fans have mixed reactions, and I can completely understand. I still have a lot of stock in Ron Holland. I know some people don't with the jump shot, and I understand it. Like, it's a very raw jump shot that still needs a hell of a lot of work development-wise. You're not really comfortable with him, taking 3-point shots. You're just not, and I get it. Like, he has a lot of work to do to become more of a league average 3-point shooter. There's defensive upside. There's upside with his game in terms of attacking the basket. There's some of the drives that he gets to the lane and some of the layups he makes or just kind of leave you in awe. I still think Ron Holland has a lot of value on the Detroit Pistons as a trade piece. But again, it really depends what New Orleans wants. All those teams mentioned, I'm sure they're going to be calling Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver and offering something as well. I think if you were able, though, to end your offseason with acquiring Trey Murphy, I think more Pistons fans would calm down a little bit. And I don't know if all of you guys that listen to this podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube right now or audio, like whatever podcast audio or platform you listen to, if you guys are active on social media, especially Twitter, I have never seen Pistons fans act this way. And like, I get coming off a 60-win season, like you have way more expectations, and it doesn't help that every national outlet has kind of just said, yeah, the Pistons could go big game hunting, and then like you sign John Collins, which it's no shot at John Collins. I think he's a fine player that will be your new starting power forward, but like that's not a big game hunting move. That's just kind of like a high level role player as your starting power forward. Same with Isaiah Joe. Like I think Isaiah Joe's a really good piece. I think he's going to have a breakout year in Detroit with more opportunities, but like that's not a big game hunting move. And we got him because OKC needed to save money. It was a salary dump. But so far, it's just Isaiah Joe and John Collins. If you can come away with Trey Murphy, I think more Pistons fans maybe will calm down a little bit. Like, just the outrage on social media 3 days into free agency is kind of crazy. And it's like people are like, when's the last big name free agent we signed? Like Chauncey Billups, Josh Smith, Charlie V, Ben Gordon. Like, Pistons notoriously have not been a free agent destination. They haven't really signed really big free agents. They've done it through trades. They've done it through the draft. So, like, hopefully they are a little bit more active in the trade market. And maybe Trey Murphy's on this team. If he does get traded and it's not the Detroit Pistons, I don't even want to see Twitter that day. I don't, because I think a lot of Pistons fans are just circling him in starting fives. Like, I'm already seeing like starting 5 graphics on social media of Trey Murphy being next to Cade in the backcourt with the Sar Thompson, John Collins, and Jalen Duren. I was like, let's pump the brakes, guys. Like, we don't even know if we're getting them. We don't even know like the other packages that teams are involving. Like maybe other teams have better players that New Orleans wants. But again, like I said it earlier, I don't see him getting traded just because like Troy Weaver never traded a valuable asset when his value was at an all-time high. Like as Pistons fans, we know this. Like he just never did it. He never did it in this time. But Joe Dumars is down there. Maybe Joe will pull the trigger. Maybe he can kind of convince Troy, like, hey, let's move Trey. His value's at an all-time high. Don't know if two former executives that used to work for the Pistons are going to do the Pistons any favors. Like that's a whole other thing too. Maybe a conspiracy theory by me. I know I'm just thinking out loud right now, but we'll have to wait and see what does happen with the Trey Murphy trade buzz and trade rumors as we're getting farther and farther into this NBA offseason, and maybe it happens during Summer League. You never know, because I think some trades during Summer League happen as well. So there's been like a lot of talk of possible 3-team trades, and apparently Marcus Sasser is going to get traded in about 4 days on the 6th of July when they're allowed to. And let me put this graphic on the screen for you guys to see. So we got MFFL Nation quoting Mark Stein saying the Dallas Mavericks are expected to acquire Marcus Sasser, but have to wait until July 6th to make it official. And then we have another thing from All Things Mavs saying Mark Stein says there's no expectation that the Mavericks will send out a player in an upcoming Marcus Sasser trade who would be absorbed into the trade exception. So Dallas does have a trade exception from the Jaden Hardy trade that kind of slides into Marcus Sasser's $5 million salary. And you may be thinking, like, did we trade Marcus Sasser to Dallas for nothing? And the details haven't come out yet. I've speculated that I think it is going to be a multiple team trade because the Isaiah Stewart trade has not yet become official. And what team just made a trade? The Memphis Grizzlies with the Dallas Mavericks. I think that it's going to be a 3-team trade between the Detroit Pistons, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Memphis Grizzlies. I think it just makes sense. There was also some reporting yesterday that the Detroit Pistons had to get to $20 million to be able to afford Isaiah Joe and the John Collins, which was a sign-and trade. The Stewart trade got them to $15 million. They needed an additional $5 million, and Sasser's $5 million would get them to $20 million. So that's why I think the Sasser trade could be part of a 3-team or a multiple-team trade that has not yet became official. But there was reports that Marcus Sasser was on the trade block a couple of days ago. There were reports that Dallas was the odds-on favorite to land Marcus Sasser. Again, I don't know how much playing time that kid's going to get. Like, yeah, he's going to get a fresh start. Yeah, he's back home in Texas, but I don't know how much playing time he's going to get under Dusty May. I just don't. I know Dusty will probably like him because he's a feisty guard that can shoot threes and switch defensively. Like, that's cool. But again, doesn't sound like the Pistons are getting anything. I know I saw some Pistons fans speculate that we got a 2031st from, which would be from Golden State, but that was Dallas's last first-round pick. I don't think they're going to give us a first-round pick for Sasser. They probably gave that first-round pick for Santi Aldama, which, by the way, that was a hell of a trade by Dallas. Santi, I've wanted for the longest time. Really good power forward, 7 foot, can play between a 4 and a 5. Dallas's biggest need was power forward, and they addressed that with the draft pick of Morez Johnson. They still have PJ Washington. Dallas is looking good, man. They're looking really good with the brand new front office, brand new head coach. They had to get rid of Nico Harrison. They got rid of Jason Kidd. So I think Dallas is going to be fun, but kind of sucks Sasser to get traded. Kind of sucks that we're probably not getting anything back. Maybe we get a second-round pick or something. Who knows? The reason why I think the Pistons aren't going to take anything back is they just can't, because they don't want to retain any salary. They want to kind of get to that $20 million price point so they can sign Isaiah Joe or be able to trade for Isaiah Joe, excuse me, and be able to sign John Collins. But they want to kind of discuss the Marcus Sasser trade. So we're just talking about John Collins, and this resulted in Tobias Harris. Right after we were done recording our podcast, he had signed with the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs were one of the teams that were linked to him over the past 72 hours. There were, I guess, over 5+ teams that were very interested in Tobias Harris from multiple reports. And Tobias Harris went for a 2-year, $31 million deal from Shams Charania. It says the veteran forward exits Detroit after helping lead the franchise turnaround and now joins a young contending team in San Antonio. I do apologize if you guys do hear fireworks. Looks like my neighbors just started popping fireworks off at 10 o'clock at night, which cool, I guess. But getting back to Tobias, I think when you look at the contract, 15.5 versus 17 for John Collins, maybe some Pistons fans are probably like, I'd rather bring him back Tobias for 15.5, because that's something else that I've seen on the timeline kind of discussed today of, obviously they're upset with how this offseason has kind of transpired, and they would rather just have brought Tobias Harris back on a 2-year deal. Now, there are a couple of tweets on the screen that we are going to read, one from Jake Fisher and one from our very own Cody Davis, who is a Detroit Pistons reporter for the Detroit News. And Jake Fisher said, I'm told Detroit wasn't willing to offer Tobias Harris more than 1-year guaranteed season either. With the Lakers business today, let's see if Harris or Rui Hachimura end up signing with the Spurs. Obviously, this was before Tobias did sign with the San Antonio Spurs. So Detroit was only willing to offer him 1 year, which is we'll get into in a minute. And then Cody Davis says, it goes without saying Tobias Harris has played a significant role helping the Pistons turn their franchise around. Both sides expressed desire for Harris to return to Detroit, but the business side came into play, leading to his signing with the Spurs. So, obviously, the one thing that I want to kind of just discuss and talk about was the 1-year report from Jake Fisher. And Detroit was only willing to offer Tobias Harris the 1 year. Now, my honest reaction with this is if you're only going to offer Tobias Harris the 1 year, it makes so much sense why John Collins' contract was constructed the way it was constructed, right? His contract was constructed in a way where, it was a 3-year, $50 million deal, but only the first year was guaranteed. Maybe the Pistons went to Tobias and say, hey, we can give you a 2 or 3 year deal, but we can only guarantee your salary for 1 year. Again, why would the Pistons do that? Why would they structure a deal with John Collins for 1 year and only offer Tobias Harris the 1 year? I think it's all about flexibility. In this organization, that's probably one of their favorite words over the past couple of years is having flexibility, having cap space, being able to make moves, not being tied down to any long-term money. And here's my only thing with flexibility. Flexibility is only valuable if you're actually going to do something with it. That's it at the end of the day. If you're not going to do anything with flexibility, it's pointless. Obviously, it's 17 million versus 15.5. Really depends what you guys value. I think John Collins is a completely different player versus Tobias Harris. I think John Collins is more of a lob threat. He's more of a player that I think can run up and down the court with these young players like Asar Thompson and Cade Cunningham. And Jalen Duran and others. Kind of fits within the youth movement as well. Doesn't shoot as many threes as Tobias Harris did, but he does shoot a better percentage. He shot 40% from 3 with the Clippers. Now, does that 40% dip down if he gets 5, 6, 7 attempts a game? Probably does dip down a little bit. But I think his usage is actually going to go up a lot versus what he did with the Los Angeles Clippers. That's just my personal opinion on it. I think Isaiah Joe and John Collins' usage is probably going to go through the roof because I think these are two players that the organization is actually going to lean on pretty heavily. This is my personal opinion, but they kind of want to talk about the Tobias Harris of him going to the San Antonio Spurs for 2 years, the reason why the Detroit Pistons elected to go with John Collins. And now we know the 1 year thing because it's just for flexibility. Could it be because they're looking at contract extensions with Asar Thompson? Like they could sign an extension with Asar right now and it doesn't go into their cap space until next summer. That could be an issue. That could be an issue they're looking at of like how expensive is Asar going to be? Will Asar even sign an extension with the Detroit Pistons right now? We'll have to wait and see. Right now, the extension talk is focused on Jalen Durham, but let's kind of get into Duncan Robinson. So Duncan Robinson, I think a lot of people have speculated that the Detroit Pistons might waive him. We got a report from Chris Haynes that Duncan Robinson is actually staying, matter of fact. Says Haynes says that the Pistons will not be waiving Duncan Robinson. Now, again, like I saw some people kind of speculate that he may get waived just so the Pistons could generate cap space. That was like the only real reason why you would waive Duncan Robinson because his contract is only $2 million guaranteed. The rest is non-guaranteed. So you could generate up to $14 million worth of additional cap space. Obviously, Detroit does not want to do that because they need more floor spacers, and he was their only floor spacer this past season. This offseason, that is something they've actually added quite a bit of, perimeter spacing with not only Duncan Robinson, you also have Isaiah Joe, you also have John Collins, Abuka Okori, shot a pretty decent percentage in college. We'll see if that does translate to the NBA level, but they have more floor spacers now than they did last year. The second leading 3-point field goal made player behind Duncan Robinson was Cade Cunningham. And we know Cade Cunningham is still kind of like an inconsistent 3-point shooter. There are months where he could shoot like, 40, 50%, but there are other months where it's like sub 30s. He just hasn't been the most consistent 3-point shooter. But towards the end of the season, he did start hitting more of those 3-point shots. So you absolutely love to see that. Now, I did mention about some cost cutting moves that the Detroit Pistons could help teams that are in the tax. And this comes from a tweet that I saw earlier on Twitter. And I didn't want to kind of discuss these three players. Shout out to Greg, who, if you guys haven't followed Greg and Kyle Metz, are two of the best just cap space guys that are Pistons fans, by the way. We're very lucky to have both of them. But Greg outlined that there are currently 11 teams that are in the tax. 3 ways Detroit could use their trade exception or mid-level exception to help a team. And he mentions 3 players in particular. He mentions Indiana Pacers forward Jarris Walker. He could fit into a $8.7 million TPE as a backup 4 to get out of Indiana of the tax. So helping a Central Division rival. I don't know how I feel about that, but Jarris Walker, color me intrigued as a backup 4. Take Zeke Naji from Denver to grease the skids in a bigger deal. I'd probably stay away from Zeke Naji with the 10-foot pole. He's got a terrible contract, but Greg is kind of outlining there could be possibly a bigger deal if you do take Zeke Naji away with helping Denver, create cap space so they can re-sign Peyton Watson. And the last one is take Sam Hauser into the mid-level exception to get Boston out of the tax. So there's a couple of names. I'm just going to ignore the Zeke Naji name just because I think I'm good on it. Jarris Walker, that's an interesting name. Now, he was a player that I remember a lot of Pistons fans were particularly pretty high on the kid. Now, obviously, he has not had too much playing time under Rick Carlisle in Indiana, and you could maybe attribute that to Rick Carlisle, but you could also attribute it to Jarris Walker has just not really, panned out in the NBA so far. I think that as a backup 4, he's fine. I think defensively, you love what you see. Offensively, it's a whole other story. Even though he did have a game against Detroit where he could not miss a 3, and he's a terrible 3-point shooter. I don't know if the Pistons would want to take on a flyer project, cheaper power forward that's still on a, rookie deal, but you'd have to extend him almost immediately because he's in the same draft class as Sar Thompson. Maybe that's a name you look at as a backup for. Sam Hauser is a name that we've kind of talked about in previous podcasts, throughout this season and last. He's a guy that can shoot the hell out of the ball. Backup for not as athletic as a Jarris Walker, but I think why you would be intrigued with the Sam Hauser is just the perimeter floor spacing that he could provide at a forward position. I think defensively, he's about average. He can hold his own with some of the, bigger forwards in the game, but, you're not trading for Sam Hauser for his defense. You would trade for Sam Hauser because of the perimeter spacing. And in a reserve role, I think he would actually be, pretty decent. But I mean, those are some, cost-cutting moves that the Detroit Pistons could use their trade exception with, or even their mid-level exception as well, if they want to do it that way. So shout out to Greg for, kind of outlining that. But who knows what the Detroit Pistons do. I think they're probably going to make one more move before the season, comes up, and like we're a good 3 months away from the season, but I think it's just one more move. I think you kind of look at the roster, look at the free agency signings, the draft, the two-way guys that they're going to sign. I think they're pretty locked in stone with the type of roster that they're comfortable with. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of Pistons fans are pretty underwhelmed with the offseason, and understandably so. Completely understand it. Got two more topics of this podcast, and one of the topics is going to be Detroit Pistons second round pick. We haven't really talked about him on the podcast yet, which maybe that's my fault. We haven't talked about him on the podcast, but I'm trying to put it on the screen for you guys. Give me a second. My computer's has been bugging out all day, and I can't figure out why, but it's not working right now. But second round pick, Ugonna, who I probably completely butchered that. He is going to sign with the Detroit Pistons, did sign his contract today, and the contract that he signed was a two-way contract. Oh, now it wants to work. These were pictures earlier in the day. He went to the Detroit Pistons practice facility, signed his contract with his agent. So it is going to be a two-way contract. I know some people thought he was going to get a standard contract. He's getting a two-way. Now, I think why a lot of Pistons fans are talking about this kid is a few reasons, and we'll go over why a lot of Detroit Pistons fans are hyping up a second-round pick. One of the best shot blockers in college basketball at Virginia, 7 foot tall. He's got almost a 10-foot wingspan, 9 foot 5 inches to be exact, 237 pounds, has the ability to stretch the floor a little bit, showed that in Virginia. Still a work in progress development-wise, but I think he's an intriguing second-round pick. Now, this was a draft pick that the Detroit Pistons did trade, I believe, with the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks. I don't remember the exact trade, but I do remember him wearing a Houston Rockets hat during draft. I think the Knicks traded with the Rockets, and then the Pistons traded with the Rockets to get this kid. But, 7-footer, can protect the rim at an elite level. I think he's just going to be a development project this upcoming season with the Motor City Cruise. I could be wrong here, but that's just what I'm kind of guessing. It really depends what he does in the summer league and training camp. And before we do end the podcast, we will be going over the Detroit Pistons Las Vegas Summer League team, and he is going to be participating with Ibuka Corey. So 2 of the Pistons draft picks will be in Las Vegas, heading out there very, very soon as they do start Summer League early next week. But I think Ugonna is going to be probably the talk of Summer League. A lot of Pistons fans are going to say, who's that 7-footer that we drafted that can protect the rim? But did want to kind of touch on it that he is going to be signing a two-way contract with the Detroit Pistons. Will not be a standard contract, so he'll be able to spend most of his time with the Motor City Cruise, but also spend time if the Pistons do call him up. Let's go over the Summer League roster, you guys. So the Summer League roster contains a lot of familiar names, a lot of familiar players that you guys are probably familiar with from last year. So Bryce Williams, just to start off the bat, he was on the Detroit Pistons Summer League roster last year from Nebraska. He also spent a good amount of time with the Motor City Cruise. Was one of their better players as well. Then you have Orlando Thomas out of Langston. I think a lot of Pistons fans will like Orlando Thomas, given if he does actually get playing time. Then you have Corey Stevenson out of Florida International. Don't really know too much about him. I'm going to have to be pretty plugged in with the Summer League games. Again, I apologize if you guys can hear all these fireworks as I am doing this podcast. Ugonna Onyenso, who we just talked about out of Virginia, Pistons second round pick. I don't know if he's going to start, but I'll be interested to see how much playing time he does get. The Detroit Pistons first round pick, Abuka Akori out of Stanford. He's going to start. He's going to get a lot of looks with the Detroit Pistons. Be really interested to see how much he does score, how he looks in the pick and roll, how the defense looks, all stuff like that we overrate during these summer leagues because it's the only basketball we get until October, right? Next is Latavius Mitchell out of Florida Memorial. Again, don't really know too much about Latavius Mitchell. I'll be completely front with you guys. I just don't know too much about these summer league kids. Chaz Lanier, who we drafted last year, second round out of Tennessee. I expect Chaz Lanier to be kind of like the veteran of this squad, being the only second-year player that is actually an active roster spot with the Detroit Pistons right now. I expect Chaz to get a lot of looks, especially in the backcourt next to Abuka Akori, so be on the lookout for that. Next is Bashir Jahed out of Arizona State. Again, don't know too much about him. Isaac Jones, I do know quite a bit about him. He was the Detroit Pistons two-way contract. And he eventually did get a standard contract towards the end of the year with the Detroit Pistons. Isaac Jones is just an absolute beast on the glass, beast on the boards. He was one of the Motor City Crew's most important players. He kind of took the role of Tolu Smith when Tolu Smith got called up on a two-way with the Detroit Pistons when he wasn't able to play with the Crews. But Isaac Jones, I think a lot of Pistons fans will really like just his aggressive level of crashing the glass. This is the one player that I'm actually really interested to kind of watch is Jaden Henley out of Grand Canyon. It's funny, when we were posting the NBA pre-draft workouts, he was one of the players that the Detroit Pistons actually brought in for a pre-draft workout. And I think a lot of Pistons fans were like, why are we bringing in a two-way guy that is not even going to be in the top 60? This is a guy that I think could definitely earn a two-way spot. That's why I said a two-way guy. He's my early candidate for possibly earning a two-way contract. It's kind of funny when you actually watch his highlights and watch the tape. He kind of moves like Jaden Ivey. Maybe it's a Jaden thing. I don't know. Hometown kid. A lot of people are really rooting for Roddy Gale Jr. out of Michigan. I think a lot of Michigan fans are really excited to see what he can do in the summer league with the Detroit Pistons as well. Dawson Garcia, he was another player last year that was on the Detroit Pistons summer league roster. He's also an active member of the Motor City Cruise. Kind of plays off the bench for the Cruise, but he's a power forward that can bang down low in the post and also stretch the floor. And then out of Utah State, Drake Allen to kind of end this summer league roster recap. Again, I don't really go into these summer league games anticipating too much. I had someone message me summer league champions. I swear we've been saying summer league champions since Henry Ellenson went absolutely berserk. I don't know if the Detroit Pistons are going to win a summer league championship. It really depends, how they get out. And summer league is so different with how you qualify for the playoffs. It's point differential. So you got to go into these games just busting teams' ass. You got to win by at least 20, 30 points to really solidify yourself for summer league playoffs. But it should be a really interesting summer league. Again, I think their first game is the 9th of next week. So about a week from now, we will have our first Summer League action. We will be doing Summer League post-game podcast as well. Don't worry, you guys. We will definitely be covering the Summer League. But before we do wrap up this podcast, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And we have NBA Futures going on right now. And the Detroit Pistons are odds-on favorite to win the Central Division at a -175. Then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers at a +230. Indiana Pacers at a +480. Milwaukee Bucks at a +20,000. And the Chicago Bulls at a +25,000. But still kind of interested to see that the Pistons are odds-on favorite to win the Central, kind of given like the offseason so far. But again, I know it's not over. It's early. It's very early, but I hope you guys did enjoy this longer form podcast. That's what I get for doing a early afternoon podcast yesterday. But let me know what you guys think of the Kevin Durant initial kind of conversation that Clutch Points had of there was at least a conversation with this trade. Obviously, it didn't go anywhere because Houston wasn't comfortable with it. But Kevin Durant does have interest of playing with Cade Cunningham. What do you guys think about that? The Trey Murphy conversation as well, with the trade rumors heating up. Marcus Sasser getting traded. We'll have to wait and see like what is actually involved with this trade. Tobias Harris signing for less money to go play in San Antonio for a 2-year contract. Duncan Robinson not getting waived, staying. The cheap moves that the Detroit Pistons could use with their mid-level exception or trade exception that does expire on the 7th, which is next week, from the Dennis Schroeder signing trade that we did last offseason. Ugonna signing a 2-way contract with the Detroit Pistons and the Summer League roster as well. Excuse me, that was a lot to get out over the last like minute and 30 seconds. But let me know what you guys think of today's podcast and all the topics that we did discuss. Can't wait to hear from you guys. Like always, hope you guys are staying safe. Go Pistons. Peace.